Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Welcome back to the podcast. We've got a fantastic guest today. We've actually been in each other's orbits for a while, and we've finally had the opportunity to connect, and I appreciate his flexibility in recording at a time that's suitable for me and my family. So we've got Dr. Michael Neal. He is the founder and chief executive officer of Build My Team. And we're going to be talking about hiring and maybe even a little bit of firing. He's a practicing optometrist in private practice in rural Hawley, Pennsylvania. And I can tell you how rural that is because I was there for the first time in my life about 2 weeks ago because we went on a family trip to Woodlock Pines. Yes, my family went there.
And you didn't stop by? Oh,
and
Bradley.
I didn't stop by to say hi. I apologize.
This podcast is not starting off on the right foot. You should have stopped by. That's the smallest of all worlds. Wow.
I appreciate that. So he founded Build My Team to solve his own hiring struggles in his private practice by modeling how companies like Disney and the Four Seasons hire. And it worked so well for him that he expanded to help friends. And now Build My Team is a client services business in 8 different healthcare professions in over 40 states and our friends to the north, Canada. Dr. Neal, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, Bradley. And I'm over you not stopping by the practice saying hi.
Next time I'm in Hawley.
Fantastic.
So, I like to start things off in a positive way, but we're going to take this off in a negative way. What do we get wrong about hiring? Because I think everybody, we tend to follow our instincts. I want to meet this person. I want to see if they're likable. I want to see if we jive, and then I'm going to hire them or not. But I don't know if that system's the best, right? I'm pretty sure it's not. So what do we get wrong about hiring?
Well, as a doctor, what are we trained to do?
Ask people questions, take a history, do an exam. Don't examine your potential hires crossing the line. Okay. So what are you getting at?
Well, we're trained to do is essentially figure out what's wrong with a person, fix it, more or less, right? Now, if that's your focus, in a hiring situation, you have to be kept as far away from hiring people as possible. That doesn't provide a scenario where that works out for your practice, anything more than random chance. And the reason being is you are empathic. You're trying to help people. You're trying to do everything you can to essentially make them better. And folks who are the type of people you do not want in your practice will sense that. And in an interview, they're going to tell you whatever you need to hear in order to get a job. That's where we're at as doctors. Pretty tough, huh?
Yeah. So what you're saying is we have a habit of hiring people who need our help because we want to help them rather than hiring the best person for the job.
But it's not intentional. It's not that a doc says, I'm going to do that. It's just how we're hardwired with a few exceptions. What folks who are kind of distanced from the equation are looking at is hiring high performers. And they don't come in a little box with a bow on it like we all hoped that they would do. And what Build My Team has discovered is that hiring for strengths and talents, not experience and not personality or any of those types of things. We're hiring for natural strengths and talents for the particular position. That's the key. That's the secret sauce. When you do that, you end up with people who show up for work every day. They are happy to be there and they stay much longer in the job. We're talking about people who stay for years because they're being asked every day to be themselves.
So I have a personal story about that. Currently, our office manager, my office, I'm a partner in ENT and Allergy Associates. We're a big private practice in New York. We've got 50 offices. My office happens to see more new patients than almost every office, which means the check-in process is laborious because when you're checking in a new patient, it's a lot more work than an old patient. So we see a high volume, and the volume that we see is more labor intensive. And we had been through a bunch of office managers, like a bunch of them just didn't work out, and we're looking for a new one. And we had a medical assistant apply for the job. And those in charge said, listen, he doesn't know what it takes to run an office. We generally hire people from the front desk that manage the front desk, and then they get promoted to office manager.
Yeah.
And so the doctors were like, wait a second, he kills it at medical assistant. Like he makes the job look easy, and he is always happy to help other people. He helps the office run better. I bet you can teach him that stuff. So we hired him, and he's been our longest running
Yeah.
office manager, and he's killing it. And people who struggled at that position, he has been making it look easy. So he really handles it with grace. And it's because we hired for attitude and personality and not specific experience to the job.
Well, I would argue that. I agree with you on the specific experience. I don't think you hired for attitude and personality. I think you hired for somebody, unintentionally perhaps, who has the natural strengths and talents for the position. That's why he's doing so well.
He didn't have the knowledge set that we were
Exactly.
looking for, but we taught him to that.
The
Yeah.
skills are straightforward in
Yeah.
almost all scenarios. When our process is that we write the job description, we publish it to 22 different job boards, and we get all of these applicants in, oodles of applicants. It's an automated system that screens these applicants. And what we're doing is we're asking them, they walk through our process and we determine what those natural strengths and talents are. But we are not looking at resumes. Resumes can tell you what skills a person has sometimes, but they're so fabricated nowadays, it's ridiculous. What you guys did is you figured out that this fella probably has the natural strengths and talents for the position. And lo and behold, look at the outcome. It's incredible, isn't it? Versus what like you guys were cycling through office managers. That's depending on how long you have them on for, that could be $20,000, $30,000 a clip in just
plus all the inefficiencies that happen in between them. And
the opportunity
when they're
cost.
not working out, right? There's so many ways that you're bleeding patients that while that's happening and you're bleeding, bleeding revenue.
Yeah. And that's where those natural strengths and talents are a complete and utter game changer. The resume is not going to tell you that. The interview process doesn't tell you that. When we're hiring folks for a practice, we aren't hiring for the right, like we're not looking for the one or two people out of everybody. We do it the opposite way. It's upside down.
Okay.
We're taking everybody who applies and we're removing the ones that cannot do the job.
Okay. How do you assess for that? Like when you get a huge pile of resumes, like imagine someone's applying to medical, when they're applying to medical school, they got to find a way to just throw out a ton of them. So they've got to put some criteria on there. So what is that you're doing that is allowing you to thin out this huge stack of applications?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a person applies for one of the positions for our clients, they get a text within 5 seconds on their cell phone. So here's a little tidbit for your listeners. If you're using email to communicate with these folks, it won't go anywhere. They're not checking their email more than they're going to tell you they're on it all the time, whatever. This is
like using smoke signals. It's an archaic way of communicating.
And if the smoke blows away, we'll send a pigeon. It doesn't work. So we use text-based. Everything is text-based because they are checking their text and they do it very, very quickly. And why do they get a text within 5 seconds? Because by 10 seconds and guaranteed by 15, they don't remember what job they applied for. It is that bad. I'm not in any way exaggerating or otherwise with that.
Well, it's
really
not
that
good
bad.
or bad. You found a system that's able to separate the cream from the milk. I don't know. I forgot the analogy, but
it was exactly. And when they run through our assessment process, it takes about 15 minutes. But at the end of that 15 minutes, especially for younger applicants, we know what they're capable of better than they do themselves. So, for example, we're measuring things like how fast they learn. That's critical. You don't want somebody who learns extremely slowly, but you also don't want somebody who learns extremely quickly because they're not going to stick around in your practice. You're just going to pour money into them and they'll leave. There's a sweet spot. We position the folks in that sweet spot.
If you have a big enough practice, like my organization, there's room for growth. They can be intra-company hires.
Exactly. And for clients with larger practices with massive upward mobility opportunities, we handle that differently. And you hit the nail right on the head. So we're also we measure, by the time an applicant is done, we have 27 pages of information on them. We summarize that in what we call our insight report. And that's a really easy PDF that's sent to our clients. And in order to get to that point, they run through the entire process. Then the ones that are still in the process at the end, we do a video interview on them. Our team does a video interview. And the video interview is designed to determine if they're going to show up in your practice and properly represent your practice. Doesn't matter what the candidate looks like in terms of race, age. That is 100% irrelevant. What matters is if they're taking this seriously, if they are eloquent, if they're more hip or otherwise. Sometimes that's a terrific fit for the practice. But matching that type of person is something that really slides beautifully into the culture of the practice. And when that's all said and done, we take the finalist applicants. There's usually 2 or 3 of them. We send them to the practice to make a decision. And a lot of times you'd be surprised they hire 2 or 3 of the people we send.
Okay, so you send them to the practice. When
Mhm.
they're meeting people in person,
Yep.
what is it that you're advising people to look for? Because my understanding, and I think I alluded to this earlier, is our
Yeah.
ability to assess people's personalities and their fit in an in-person interview is not as good as we think it is.
Well, in this
And
case,
so what are
you
you
can't
advising
lose.
them when they're actually going to the practice?
Yeah, you can't lose because we are 97% certain the people that we send you can do the job.
Okay.
So they're going to be able to do the job. That's not a question. Who do you
Well,
mesh with best? The
what I'm really
applicants.
asking is for people that might not be using your services, but want your expertise right now,
Mhm.
right? Like when they're interacting with someone in person, what are they trying to glean from that interaction?
Well, that's a tough question to answer because I'm used to sending people, like my team will send people to the practice that we know can do the job.
So
In
they've
an
already been
interview,
vetted. Yeah.
very much so. In
Yeah.
terms of their
Okay.
strengths and talents, their speed of learning, how they handle stress. Like, for example, in a position like front desk, like you had mentioned, your front desk person needs to be able to handle stress, plain and simple. But
Yeah.
maybe one of your technicians, maybe it's a lower, it would be a lower stress job. They're not dealing with people who don't understand insurance or lineups at the front, all those types of things. So for each type of candidate or for each type of job, there's a different kind of, if you will, an algorithm that we're looking for on what makes a great person for that job. And the way we kind of think about it is in terms of A players and B players. So an A player they're phenomenal. We've all had them in our practice. They do like half the work of the practice, doesn't matter how big the practice is type thing. We love them. Now, they will tolerate B players, but they're going to leave their job because of C players. And all an A player wants to do is work on a team with A players. That's
Yeah.
it. So in your practice, what Build My Team focuses on is getting you A players and B plus players. That is the entire focus of what we do. And when you can put those types of people on your bus, the metaphorical bus, then you can move them into the right seats on the bus. You would be blown away by how smooth a practice can run and also how profitably a practice can run. Like you mentioned earlier, when an office manager position gets botched,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of problems. Good thing we actually don't know what those downstream problems and they're not quantifiable because I think our stomachs would turn. That's kind of the nature of it. And that also applies to other key positions as well.
The whole A player, B player thing makes me also think of if you're trying to fit physician APP or a
Mhm.
medical assistant
Yeah.
with a physician, matching their personalities because you have
Yeah.
some doctors who are able to move through their schedules really quickly and see a lot
Yeah.
of patients in a short period of time. There's not much dilly-dallying or chit-chatting. They're not messing around on their phone. They're just like they're grinding, they're seeing lots of patients. And
Yeah.
then you have other doctors that kind of meander through their day a little more, they're chit-chatting more, maybe they're checking social media, the internet between patients and people are waiting and right, so they're less efficient. You got to make sure that you're matching your medical assistant
Yeah.
or PA with the similar personality doctor. Because if
You're
you've got an MA that really like they can really move through patients quickly and have their fingers on the pulse of the schedule and they know exactly what the next
yep.
patient's they're able to like they're going to lose their minds if they're with a doctor who moves.
Yeah.
And same with vice versa. The
Yep.
doctor is going to lose their mind if their medical assistant is not on the ball. And
Yep.
so, matching those two personalities, I think from what you're describing, it's intuitive. It just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is essentially the strengths and talents approach is the secret sauce that we use for building these teams. And the results are pretty incredible.
So we have some listeners who aren't in private practice,
Yeah.
or maybe they're in a large practice, they're working in a hospital system. And
Hmm.
so they're really not in charge of hiring and firing, right?
Hmm.
But they do get to vet some of the candidates. So they get to either, meet, maybe there'll be a couple people that they funnel their way to interview. So what advice would you have for those physicians where the hospital system is really the funnel rather than you? And how do they make sure they get the best of those few candidates they have to choose from?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because I'm used to highly vetted people through a big fat funnel, you know?
Yeah, but
Um,
you were at one point not you were working outside that system until you
yeah.
created the system. And so what you've learned, how would you, what advice would you give to your prior self that wasn't seeing people that have been
Well,
vetted
first of
like that?
all, I get shudders thinking of going back to the previous system. I think that one of the things you look for right off the bat is how fast they learn. You can kind of tell if the elevator's going all the way to the top or not. Speed of learning is tremendously important, especially in healthcare, because like, when was the last time you had a day where you didn't learn something? I mean, it's just the nature of what we do, and we're so accustomed to it. But bringing somebody in from outside of healthcare, it can be completely overwhelming. So they have to be able to learn quickly. And
Okay.
another thought is, I mean, I talk pretty quickly, you talk pretty quickly. We have a cadence, a verbal cadence that's running at a good clip. One of the things we measure is speed of communication. And let's say a person I'm hiring wants me to talk like this. There's no chance. I mean, I'm walking from between exam rooms, and if I've got a scribe following me or something like that, I'm just going to talk usually faster than I am now. And that person has to be able to listen to what I'm saying, take action on it, and complete the tasks that are necessary. We're all used to that. So if you don't have that ability with the verbal cadence side of things, a good match, you're going to be fighting the biggest of uphill battles. And on top of it, they're not going to be able to get the work done. So now you, as the doc, you're sitting there with a post-it note in your pocket, writing names down to make sure it gets done by the end of the day. How long are you going to put up with that?
Yeah.
Right? Gonzo. The person's gone. That's it.
Okay. So some big qualities are the ability to learn quickly, the ability to keep up, and how they respond to stressful situations.
Mhm.
So how do you determine how someone's going to respond in a stressful situation? And don't tell me you're going to put them in a room where the window is glued shut and you're going to ask them to open it, like that
No, it's
classic
through.
residency situation that I knows if it really happened or just an urban legend. So how are you determining how people are going to respond in stressful situations? Do you
Yeah,
actually put them in them?
we do not.
Yeah.
We use psychometric testing.
Okay.
That's the basis of how we approach this. And
How do they respond to being asked to fill out
no.
psychometric tests?
Oh, they respond fabulously.
Oh,
The
interesting.
completion rate that we have is terrific. So first off, there are people who just flat out balk at filling out a darn thing. Terrific. That's stage one of our filter. We're asking you to do a thing.
You're going to
If
be
you don't
asking
wa-
all of our patients, every single one, to fill out reams of information. If you can't do it now for this job, you are not qualified. Yeah.
Well, first step is we ask them to do a thing. If they don't want to do the thing in order to get the position in your practice, thank you so much for choosing to exit our process,
Yeah.
because those folks are the colossal time wasters, not tire kickers. The car doesn't even have tires on. I mean, they just are destined to waste time. So those people are removed. And throughout the process, using these psychometrics, we get to the point where a practice has about 30 minutes into the initial discussion call so we can understand what they're interested in. And then about 30 minutes after that, you can hire a person with an hour's worth of work. That's how well these psychometric tests work. And like I said, it's 97% accuracy depending on the position, but we guarantee everything. So for the ones that don't work out for any reason, they're guaranteed. So for example, let's say somebody comes on board and their husband gets transferred, guaranteed, 90 days. Yeah, it doesn't matter why.
Let's say it doesn't work out,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it happens occasionally. Yeah.
It does. It does. So how do you go about firing? What advice do you have for handling this difficult situation well?
Be direct and do it quickly. The old adage was hire slow, fire fast. Well, you can't hire slow anymore because legitimately COVID changed everything when it comes to that. The A players, the only thing we have for our clients, if I jump around here, is that they have to reach out to applicants within 48 hours. They have to move very, very quickly. Now, on the
Yeah.
firing side of things, as docs, we hate it. Nobody wants to fire somebody. So what we've done in our practice is we've looked to see if that person can legitimately fill another seat on the bus. And I'll give you an example of this. This worked out as perfectly as it could have. We had a person who was unbelievably empathetic on our front desk. She was, if you told her a tenth of a sob story, she wasn't asking you for money. It was a disaster. Now, we moved her to patient coordinator position where she gets all these people that we send for surgery scheduled for surgery. She prints some direction. Oh my goodness. The rate at which those patients show up for surgery is almost 100%. So we took somebody who was in the categorical wrong seat on the bus. We put her into the right seat on the bus, and she is literally perfect at the job. I don't know how to improve her productivity or outcome for what she does. So that I would say on the firing side, is there another seat on your bus that they would be excellent at?
That actually makes a very difficult conversation much easier, because
Yeah.
then you say, listen, I don't think you're a great fit for this position for X, Y, and Z, but you know what you would be a good fit for. So
Yeah.
instead of you being like, listen, you stink, you're fired, you're out of here, it's more like, the key didn't fit in this lock, but I think there's another lock for it.
Yeah. And look, some people just need to be fired. Okay.
Yeah.
We can all agree on that. And some people are just in the wrong fit for their strengths and talents. And that's what
Yeah.
that person I'm referring to was. So, to give you an example of how extreme this is, in our practice, we are almost at exactly a 50-50 ratio on this. A person will apply, let's say we have two jobs open. A person will apply for job A. 50% of the time, we move them to job B. The applicants don't care. They
Yeah.
almost never care. They want to work in an office with air conditioning, sit at a computer, or talk to people all day and actually get paid for it. And they also know that almost certainly their paychecks are going to clear. Okay. So like that's
Almost.
yeah. Well, COVID was the exception, but that's it.
Yeah.
They want a stable position. These might be folks who are single parents or otherwise they're looking for stability, and healthcare is phenomenal at that. So 50% of the time they're applying for the wrong job. They have no idea what they're good at. They have no idea what their strengths and talents are. And that's where it's such an amazing improvement when you start to take a look at that.
So you mentioned earlier, you've got your A players, you want to fit them with the A players, and the B players, you fit them with the B players. Nobody wants to play with the C players because it's going to bring everyone down.
Yeah.
You're going to give everyone extra work. They're going to resent it. Any more advice for retaining the best staff? So now we found them. We want to keep them. How do we make sure we keep them?
Job number one is remove C players from your team.
Yeah.
And replace them with A or B players. As long as there are C players on the team, those A players are going to be thinking, yeah, I'm carrying this person. I'm doing the work for them.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, chances are they're probably right. We've seen it all on our teams.
And if they're not, you've miscategorized them.
Well, or they need to go. So it's one of the two options, but I would say the focus needs to be on removing C players.
Do you think there's anything we haven't touched upon that you want to mention?
I think from a hiring standpoint, it's speed. Truly, you will not get A players if they flat out do not want to work for somebody who's not decisive. So when Build My Team sends over candidates to our practice manager, she stops what she's doing and reaches out to them. And if it happens at 8 a.m, if she can get them in by noon for an in-person interview, we will do that. This is not scheduled a week out. We move as fast as we possibly can. And the reason being is these A players, they're gone. If you're not decisive, they're gone.
Yeah.
So the days of committee hiring, everybody gets a vote, that type of thing, they're going to produce quite reliably C players on your team.
Yeah. Great advice. So, if we're looking for a optometrist in Hawley, Pennsylvania, definitely reach out to Michael Neal. But that's not why you were on the show today. You were on the show today because of Build My Team. You can help us hire and therefore keep our practices and keep them more efficient. So where do people find you online?
Yeah, buildmyteam.com. And it doesn't matter what private practice you're in. We're in 10 different healthcare professions. The positions are all extremely similar with some exceptions, and we can help. You just got to know that going through this potentially awful time hiring and the turnover and all those things, that's the bottom. Set up a consultation. It's free. We learn all about your practice, and then we figure out if we can help you. And if we can help you, look out. We're going to do a bang up job on that. If we can't, we will flat out tell you that and move forward.
And there was one more thing. There was something that you said at the beginning of the show. It has nothing to do with hiring or firing, but it has to do with the treating patients. And you said 25%, even in optometry, 25% of it is anxiety.
Yeah, that's my best guess.
And if you're not seeing it at 25%, you're missing a lot of it. And my experience is very similar to that. So that's just something for all those doctors out there listening. We're all seeing it. It's out there, probably getting worse now, not better. And so make sure that you are, managing that in addition to I'm not saying prescribe SSRIs, but just make sure you've got your finger on the pulse of what's really going on with your patient and you're seeing the whole patient for it. Yeah. So that was great advice. And again, buildmyteam.com. Dr. Michael Neal, thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you so much, Dr. Block.
Thanks for listening. So please share it or like it or comment on a social media post or write us a 5-star review. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.